Your Excellency, Mr. President, Mr. President of Somalia, Vice President, honorable members, and many, many friends. I wonder whether you've heard of the Baju people. They're quite unique. There's just 500,000 of them, and they live in the waters of the Malay Peninsula, just next to the Philippines. What's unique about these people is they spend 60% of their day in the water. They are fishermen and fisherwomen, and over the known 1,000 years of their history, they take to the waters every day, diving, as many of us would be jealous to note, up to 70 meters each, 210 feet of water, 20 stories of building, and they will dive but between 5 and 7 minutes without the need for oxygen. Most people, if we dive, we're lucky to get 1.5 minutes, and we're struggling. But for these people who have evolved larger spleens and better contained oxygen lungs, they live off the fish, they only eat fish, and they delight to swim in the water all day. One of the wonderful things about the way in which we as humans are is that, like it or not, we absorb the atmosphere and the environment around us. We take in what our culture, what our community, and what our politics feels like. If a nation is struggling with rampant disease or pressures in its law, where there is fear, those two ugly members of the same family often stand together. That demon called division and the first cousin called corruption. What nations need more than ever, and we've discussed it at length in our prayers this morning, is that beautiful mix of sisters, integrity and unity. You see, the Baju people teach us something vital. We absorb as a people what our leaders portray. And whatever the context is in the nation in which we live, those who lead, those of us in parliament, those of us in the presidency, and those of us in business, we are responsible. There's a wonderful story told about a Maasai who went to New York City. He was in Times Square as a guest of an American attending a summit in New York. As they walked of Times Square, where there are many horns blowing and people shouting and many parading, the Maasai called to his American friend in these words, "I hear a cricket." He then slowly crossed the street in Times Square, where there were just a few shrubs growing, looked into the bushes. There beneath the branches, to his friend's great amazement, a little cricket. "That's impossible," said his American friend. "You must have superhuman hearing." "Not quite," said the Maasai. "My ears are no different to yours. It just depends on what you're used to listening for." The American friend said, "Maybe, but there's no way I could ever have heard a little cricket in the middle of New York City." "Ah," said the Maasai, "that's because you don't care about the crickets. But I bet you'd be amazed at what your ears will pick up when it's a priority. Let me show you." He then reached into his pocket, pulled out a few coins, and discreetly dropped them on the pavement. Amazingly, with all the noise and bustle of Times Square, people blaring horns and shouting in the streets, the friend noticed every head within 20 feet turned to look and see if the money that jingled on the pavement might be theirs. Get the point, said the Maasai? It all depends on what's important to you. This morning, we've made no excuse of saying unity, love, that passion to stand together is important to us. On the cusp of the German Olympics in 1936, in the few years leading up to the Second World War, in the presence of Adolf Hitler, when all expectations were on then the suspected leading race, that the wins would be notable and exceptional, it was for a black African-American, Jesse Owens, to set the pace. In those 1936 games, where just a year before, he jumped 26 feet, 8 1/4 inches, a record that stood with him for 25 years. When he came to the games in 1936, he observed there was a blue-eyed, blonde German taking practice jumps in the 26-foot range. So Owens felt nervous, wouldn't we all? He was acutely aware that the Nazis wanted to prove that there was an Aryan supremacy, especially over blacks. On the first jump, Owens inadvertently leapt from several inches beyond the takeoff board. He was rattled, unsettled, nervous, and he worried about his next attempt, which he fouled. At that point, the tall German introduced himself, ironically by the name Lutz Long. He said these words, "You should be able to qualify with your eyes closed," he said to Owens, referring to his 2 previous jumps. For the next few moments, the black son of a sharecropper and the white model of Nazi manhood chatted. Then Long made a suggestion. Since the qualifying distance was only 23 feet, 5 1/2 inches, why not put a mark several inches ahead and jump from there? Owens did exactly that and qualified. In the finals, Owens set an Olympic record and he earned the second of 4 gold medals in the 1936 Olympics. The first person to congratulate him, in the full presence of Adolf Hitler, was Lutz Long, standing to cheer his new friend. Owens never again saw Long after those Olympics because he was killed, Long was, in World War II. And this is what Owens said: "You could melt down all the medals and the cups that I have, and they wouldn't be a plating on the 24-carat friendship I felt for Lutz Long that day and now." I came across an interesting quote from Ralph Sockman, a philosopher, who said there are many parts to a ship. Take the ship apart by themselves, every part sinks. Plunge the propeller into the water, down it goes. Take the engine out, down it goes. Separate the frames of the doors and the windows, down they go. But put the parts of the ship together, it floats. In true unity, there is opportunity. It was Henry Ford who said that coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, working together, that is success. Very soon we will all remember the 100 years of the life of Nelson Mandela. And when we remember him, there are so many moments every one of us will have born into our imaginations, that we observed, comments we recall, moments. Some of you will have met him, as I did twice, and the delight of encountering a man who embodied these principles of peace and forgiveness. I was reading about the moment when Bill Clinton from Arkansas, noting one of our friends is from Arkansas here in the US, when he was governor, he recalls the day when Mandela was set free in February 1990 after 27 years of prison and internship. And when Mandela walked out from Robben Island, Bill Clinton said that he woke Chelsea up that morning, who was just 9, to say, "You've got to watch this moment. This is history of the most prescient kind in the making." And he noted that on Mandela's face there was the agony of a man he thought must be intensely angry with those who had jailed him, misrepresented him, lied about him, deceived from him, taken every word he said and corrupted it in order that Mandela would be forever, as the courts felt at the time, locked away for good, never ever to come to freedom. When eventually Bill met Nelson in 1992, he said he asked him this question: "How did you become the man that you are today? Given everything you had been through and all the anxiety you carried in your face, in your heart, in your hands, in your being, how did you become the man you are today? After all, surely you wanted to get your way back on those who had imprisoned you, who'd misrepresented you, who'd harmed you, who'd aligned you." Mandela said this to him: "I learned when I was in prison that they can imprison your body, but never your mind or your heart, for they are free." And then he went on to say this: "As I walked out of that prison, I was to be a free man, but if I did not forgive, I would still be in prison." So interesting, isn't it, that Jesus declares that although he is the great forgiver, and he is, that forgiveness has a prerequisite: that we forgive. That we do not bring our divisions to the altar to seek his presence. We forgive those who stand against us. I've been very taken recently with a strange little verse at the beginning of the Bible. Genesis chapter 3, verse 21. Now you all know, because I've said Genesis 3, that this is the story of Adam and Eve. Now you can take Adam and Eve how you like. Some people will say fact and history, and other people will say myth and story. That doesn't matter. What matters are the points that are being made. And we all know that the story of Adam and Eve is a story of serpents and apples and believing the wrong things and doing the wrong things, and deceit and shame and nakedness and disgrace. And you can bet your bottom dollar or shilling that actually God was angry, for all that he had made and created was to be fouled. But in Genesis 3, it tells us that he walked in the garden, looking for Adam and Eve, walking calmly as a father, and finding them. It is they who declare their nakedness. And he, in Genesis 3:21, the Lord God then made garments of skin for Adam and Eve, and he clothed them. Do we have the right to be angry? Of course we do. But do we have the right to resist and refuse acceptance, forgiveness, and reconciliation? No, we don't. For if God could clothe those who stole the core truth of all eternity, to know good from evil and to pursue permanent life, then as he forgives and clothes, so too do we. I'm always struck by those final moments of Jesus on the cross. Luke records that there are two people to one side and the other, a thief on one and a murderer on the other. He says that they hurled insults at Jesus. Not a clever time to do it. They're all struggling with death. But people are people. They will hurl insults. And when they hurled insults at Jesus, and those who stood before him wanted to further take him down and break his body, in the final moment when Jesus declares, "It is finished," he takes the hand, metaphor, murderer, and says, "Come with me." Because, as he declared earlier, you didn't know what you were doing. And because you didn't know what you were doing, come with me. There is forgiveness and freedom. There is another way, an open door, a space where we can be together. There is a place where all that you have carried of your failure doesn't have to rest on your shoulders anymore. Mr. President, as you and your colleagues in Parliament, in your government, put into effect the beauty of this reconciliation, and as we observe from outside and long for, dream for, and see the opportunity in our nations too, I want to leave you with one powerful story. But I'll share it with everyone else, but this is especially for the President. A long time ago, around the year 250 AD, there was an emperor called Valerian. And he took it upon himself to persecute the new followers of Jesus Christ. He objected to them, he wanted to break them apart, and he did everything possible to eradicate Christianity from the new emerging Roman Empire. So he sent his officials along to a man called Brother Lawrence, deacon and treasurer of one of the biggest churches in Rome. And when he came along to Brother Lawrence, he said, "We're going to strip you of all the assets you have, take from you all the beauty and finery of the church, and make it part, property, assets, jewelry, of the governance of the land." Brother Lawrence was willing and said, "I'll bring before you all the finery, jewelry, and beauty of the church, but give me 3 days." So he gathered together all those that he could find, everyone he knew who was poor, blind, disabled, sick, widowed, and orphaned, gathered them together into a private, great room, invited the emperor to come and all of his officials to observe the treasure trove. As they came looking for things that glisten, Lawrence flung open the doors and declared emphatically, "Here before you, the blind, the lame, the sick, the widows, the orphans, the broken, those in desperate need, these are the treasures of the church." The emperor was so enraged, he ordered that Brother Lawrence should be literally tortured and burnt alive. It is reported that Lawrence was so confident in his future that as he was turned on a spit in Rome, he said, "You may turn me over now, I'm done on this side already." The treasures of a nation are those who do not enjoy our privileges. The treasures of Kenya are those on the margins of freedom. The treasures of this continent and its many countries are those who've yet to discover the dignity all of us take for granted, the treasures that Jesus delighted to spend time with, the poor, the lame, the Mother Teresa had a little handwritten note on her wall. People, she wrote, are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you're kind, people will accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you're successful, you'll win some false friends and some true enemies. Be successful anyway. What you spend years building, someone could destroy overnight. Build anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, they might be jealous, but be happy anyway. The good you do today, people will forget tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give the world the best you've got anyway. You see, she wrote, in the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. The Lord bless you.